What's happening, guys? Welcome to another episode of Journey Apparel TV, and today's going to be a quick little video on heat transfer vinyl and why I recommend that you start off with this method when you're just beginning your career as a custom apparel printer, especially from home. For heat transfer vinyl, you're going to need a few things to be able to make it work. First off, most of you already own a computer, so you can make your designs on, and then you need a what's known as a plotter or a vinyl cutter. In this case, we use the Silhouette Cameo 3 in our shop, and you also need a heat press. Now, I will say this: a lot of people ask me often whether or not you can use a standard household iron to perform an application on heat transfer vinyl, and my answer is you can, but I won't guarantee that your design is going to stay on your shirt for that many washes. And as I mentioned before, that's a really important aspect to remember when printing t-shirts, is how long your image is going to stay printed on your shirt. Another important thing about heat transfer vinyl is that when you start off with this, it will eliminate you having to go through a lot of headaches with other methods when you're just starting out. For example, one of the biggest problems that you can run into when printing apparel is something called dye migration. Over here on my left, probably the camera won't catch it that well, but this is one of our custom one of our own designs that we came up with. It's a real simple phrase. It says "you got this" in a cool looking font. And as you can see, this is white ink. Actually, this is called a Plastisol ink heat transfer. And what it is basically screen printed ink on a special release paper, and from there you transfer it onto your shirt via your heat press. This image has been printed on white ink on a red garment. Now, the camera doesn't catch it that well, but this image is supposed to be a vibrant white, but it's not. Dye migration is happening on this image where the red dye from the t-shirt is actually trying to come through the white ink, which the image now, instead of being a vibrant white, is actually showing up kind of a pink tone, because it looks kind of diluted, like the ink was very weak on the shirt, and the red from the shirt is trying to come through the white ink. Now with heat transfer vinyl, you don't get that, because heat transfer vinyl is a solid color material, and there is no risk of dye migration, at least not with the vinyl that I use. I use vinyl from two different companies, and I haven't seen any dye migration from either of the two companies, which is good. Which means your white is gonna stay 100% white. If applied correctly, it's gonna last you the lifetime of the garment. So that means that I don't have to worry about the dye from the garment trying to come through the heat transfer vinyl and making it look like it's a muted color, a muted tone, or anything like that. This right here is actually a design that I came up with a while back when I was just starting. It says Giant Ambitions, and there's an elephant right there. You know, when I do a when I do my own designs, I always aim for creating designs that inspire people, that promotes action, promotes a healthy lifestyle. And this design right here is what I came up with back when I started. It was one of my earliest designs. This shirt has been washed many times. I would say over 10 times easily. You can see right here the fuzz from the wearing of the garment, and the fabric is, it's been washed a lot. You get kind of that leathery feel when you wash the garment for so many times. And you can see the red color here is very vibrant still, as well as the white. There is nothing showing up from under the garment through the heat transfer vinyl. And also, this was a really good application, and you can tell because after being washed so many times, nothing's coming off. I mean, this vinyl is on there. You can stretch it, you can pull the garment, and nothing's gonna happen. It's been washed many times. I've wore, this is one of my favorite shirts actually, and I've wore it many times and it's still looking good. And that's what I was talking about in my last video. I mentioned that you want to give that guarantee to your clients that your product is gonna last them, you know, for a long time. They're gonna get their money's worth. So you got to make sure that you apply it correctly so it won't peel off or anything like that. Going back to the point that I mentioned about the home iron, using the home iron, you can definitely try to apply heat transfer vinyl onto a garment with the home iron, but I don't guarantee that it's gonna stay on there for that many washes, you know. And heat transfer vinyl is supposed to last the lifetime of the garment, if not more. You know, your garment is supposed to be completely worn out before anything peels off. And this was a good application. I mean, you get no cracking, which is another issue that you can run into in your apparel printing career. And heat transfer vinyl, you don't get that. You don't run that risk of it cracking or anything. I mean, everything's on there. It's on there, you know. And something really important that I'm gonna mention to you guys that I wish I would have learned back when I was just starting out, because you know, these little things that I'm about to share with you, I didn't know them, and I watched a lot of videos on how to use heat transfer vinyl before I invested any money. And there's little details that that nobody mentioned in their videos, and you know, I learned them the hard way, and I'm about to share them with you, so you don't have to go through a lot of the headache that I went through. But I will say this: thanks to everybody that is putting out free education out there. Thanks to everybody that helped me learn what I do today, and you know, I appreciate all that you give to the community. So thanks for that. So I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys know where I do and do not recommend use heat transfer vinyl. For example, I have here set up in my Photoshop a document where I show different kinds of text that I could use with heat transfer vinyl to print a design on a t-shirt. Starting from the top, I don't recommend, and you can see it says on there, don't recommend. I don't recommend that you use heat transfer vinyl for skinny fonts like the very first one on the top. Or, for example, sometimes you get customers that'll show you a really nice looking cursive font, and it'll have, as you can see on the end of the second line of text, you get a lot of thin curls and really delicate curves. I don't recommend that you use heat transfer vinyl for these types of fonts, the first two starting from the top. I do recommend that you use heat transfer vinyl for the last two types of font, you know, thicker, bolder fonts. The reason for that is heat transfer vinyl is basically a thin film, which on one side is the color and on the back side is the adhesive. I'm gonna show you here. I already had one loaded up into my my vinyl cutter. And also, please excuse the shakiness of the camera. I'm not a professional videographer, and I do have my camera handheld right now. So let me take this off, which I already had loaded into the vinyl cutter. So basically, here's a piece of fluorescent green heat transfer vinyl. See, on one side it's going to show the color, and on the other side the color is pretty muted because that's going to be the adhesive that actually sticks on to the t-shirt. Having said that, these skinnier fonts I don't recommend on this material because these little curves, for example this one here, they won't stick very well onto your garment. I mean, you'll notice it after you cut your design on your vinyl cutter and you're weeding the design, which weeding means taking out all the parts that you're not going to need, that are not supposed to be in your final design on your t-shirt. Those curves and those delicate lines and fonts like the first one on the top, this one, they don't have that much area of adhesive once you weed them and get ready to print them on your garment. Whereas fonts like this and this one at the bottom, they're bolder, they're thicker, so there's gonna be more adhesive to cover the area on your garment that you want to print on. I've had an experience where I've used this particular font here, and these little curves at the end, and probably this loop on the O, and probably this top line on the T, they peeled off fairly quick after the first or second wash. And that's no good, you know. So you gotta let your clients know when they come to you with a design or an idea that they want to use for you to print for them. You gotta let them know whether or not it can be done or whether or not you recommend it. Another thing, when I was just starting out trying to learn how to use heat transfer vinyl, I had no idea that you know, the process behind it. I had no idea of the time that it would take for me to get a design from start to finish. So I already have another screen, and this screen is my Silhouette Studio, it's called. And this particular software is what came for me to use with my Silhouette Cameo 3 vinyl cutter right here. So I already have one of the lines of text that I just showed you in Photoshop, the one that says "do recommend" in a thicker font, and I'm gonna go ahead and show you how I'm going to cut this design into my my piece of vinyl here. And just to give you guys an idea of the time and the process behind getting a design from start to finish. So I'm gonna lay it back on this sheet here, and I am doing you know, one hand here and one hand there. So I just wanted to get this done so I can show you guys without any further delay, because we've been really busy lately. So I'm gonna put it on there. I'm gonna hit load on my screen, and it's gonna load. This vinyl cutter comes with this mat, and this is where you load your pieces of vinyl on to be cut, and that's when you go ahead and process with your computer. So I have this set up on here. What you gotta do is you gotta flip your image to read backwards. So you're gonna go, I'm gonna click on that and flip horizontally. The reason is you gotta cut backwards because you're actually cutting on the back side of the piece of vinyl. So when you cut it into the piece of vinyl, you gotta flip it over when you're gonna print so it'll read correctly. So that's the reason why we're going to mirror the image, it's called. And a lot of people usually when they record their heat transfer vinyl cutting process on their vinyl cutter, they will go ahead and fast forward through the process, because it does take depending on the design, it does take some time. And you know, I've been asked, how do I get my designs onto the sheet of vinyl, and where do I get my designs from? And my answer is, a lot of the designs that I use, I create myself. I use 3 different types of software to come up with my designs. Like, once I get an idea, I decide on what method I'm going to go with to print, and should I decide to go with heat transfer vinyl, you know, I make myself aware of what I can and can't do on the vinyl, and then from there I proceed to finalize in Silhouette Studio, which is what I'm using right now. But I also use Photoshop and Illustrator for my vinyl designs. So when you create a design, it'll basically turn your design, all the lines in your design, it'll turn them into what's called a cut file, which the machine is going to read, and it's going to cut. Now on here, this is called a vinyl cutter or plotter because it has an actual blade. I happen to be using the automatic blade on the Silhouette Cameo 3, and this is what it is. It's a little blade. Inside this little cartridge, there is a very small metal blade that's going to cut into your vinyl. Put it back in there. Make sure I put it in correctly. Has grooves to help you line up your blade to make sure you're putting it in the right spot. And that is looking good right there. We're gonna lock it back in. Okay, so then we're gonna go and proceed to cut. And this is gonna go, I'm not gonna fast forward, this is gonna go as it is, and this is the actual time that it'll take for me to cut out a simple line of text with my vinyl cutter. So I'm gonna go here to the right, and it has a list of different types of materials that you can cut. This machine not only cuts vinyl, it'll cut paper, it'll cut cardstock, it'll cut canvas, duct tape, whole bunch of different materials that it'll cut. But what I'm looking for here is the vinyl. No, I'm looking for the heat transfer smooth, because this is called a smooth heat transfer vinyl. There's different types of vinyl that I'll talk about in future videos, but this is we're using the smooth. So right here, once I click on that, on the bottom here, it'll have the settings that the machine knows that are to be used for that type of material. But I always speed and the thickness of the material. So the speed means the cutting speed at which the machine is going to cut the material, and the thickness is we're telling the machine how thick the material is. So the machine knows how much to insert the blade, how much pressure to give the blade into the material. Whatever it gives me once I choose it here on the right, I always like to go two steps above, just for any reasons. And we're gonna go ahead and see how this machine cuts. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it, and this is what we got. The machine is going to read my settings. It's going to read the material, just to make sure that your material sticks onto the mat as it's supposed to. And this is the actual process that the vinyl goes through in the machine. So right there, it's the machine is cutting the vinyl with the line of text that I just showed you, and this is the actual time. Heat transfer vinyl, I would recommend it for low quantity shirts, small runs, maybe the maximum 2 colors, because the process that you're seeing here, from the designing to the cutting, this is per color. This is let's say that your image you want to use 2 colors on your image. You have to repeat this process twice. Not only that, but you have to separate all the parts and the different colors on your design in your software. So for example, if I wanted to use this line of text and make for example, I wanted to make red and recommend blue, then I would need to use 2 pieces of vinyl, a red piece and a blue piece, to go ahead and cover the whole design. And I would have to put both of them in to my vinyl cutter. It's already been about I want to say 20-25 seconds, if not more, maybe 30 seconds, and it's still cutting. So as you can see, this is why I recommend it for slow runs. And maybe you get a client that wants just 1 or 2 shirts, maybe 3 or 4. When you're starting out, it's finally done. When you're starting out, it's going to be pretty tough to work with bigger runs. You really gotta have the patience for it. So it took about a minute just to cut this line of text right here. So there, from there, you can start weeding your design. Now I'm gonna attempt. I have no help with me today, so I'm doing this all by myself. I'm going to attempt and start weeding this design out of the carrier. I'm gonna grab my weeding tool here, and what you gotta do is just start at one corner. Sorry guys, I had to stop the video real quick just so I can get this little corner peeled off. I couldn't really get it single-handedly. So this is called the weeding process, where you're gonna take the part that you don't need from your design and weed it. I know this is looking a little messy, but this is just for demonstration for you guys to get an idea. I'm not trying to do any professional type of work right now. So it's basically taking out everything that you don't need from your design. Gonna peel off everything that you don't need. Now remember, I am doing this single-handedly. One hand on the camera and one hand on the demonstration. So from there, you also have to take out all the cavities inside the letters. Take out all the cavities inside the letters until you have cleared everything. And this is the reason why, even if I was using two hands, this would not be such a quick process to weed out everything. So and you got to repeat this for every single letter, taking out just take out everything from your design that you do not need. Make sure you clear off everything off of the plastic see-through carrier that the vinyl comes adhered to, and clean up your design. I think I got everything except for this. So oftentimes, as I mentioned before, if you try to use that skinny cursive font, it wouldn't work too well, because once you try to weed it, like what I'm doing right now, all those little thin curves would fall off or rip out of your design before you even try to get it onto your garment. And should you succeed into getting those curves onto your garment, I can't guarantee that they'll last that long. So there we have it. We have the design weeded. This design comes on a plastic carrier. You can't really see it because it's clear, and it's clear for a reason. That is to help you position your design when you're getting ready to print it. As you can see, the design is reading backwards, because when you print it on the shirt, which I'll show you how to do on a future video, you'll see that I have to flip it when I print it on, and it's going to read correctly. So basically, you're going to take it off of the mat completely, and it's going to read like this. As you can see, it reads the way it should. So that's what you're going to see when you print it onto your garment. So now that you have an idea of how heat transfer vinyl works, you can decide if you want to get started with this method or not. On the next video, I'm going to talk about go further into detail and talk about how I really go from designing my work from zero, and then we're going to go ahead and see how an application is done and get the shirt ready to be sold. So any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out. Other than that, we'll see you on the next. I do apologize if this video looked a little messy. I didn't want to have any more wasted time, and I really wanted to get this video out the door. We've been really busy, it's Sunday right now, and we got a little time to do it. Next video I'll be dropping within about a week or so. I'll go more in depth on how this process is done from scratch, from zero, from absolutely nothing all the way to a final printed garment. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next.